Dusty Crew. Good morning, USA.
Good morning, sports fans. Cam, welcome back to Syracuse. I hope you had a very, very well-deserved break.
Yeah, trust me, I'm more than happy to be back. So the question is, when you wake up in the morning, what energy drink do you drink? Is it Celsius? Is it Red Bull? Is it Monster? Or is it just coffee? What is it?
I've always been Team Celsius. I think Red Bull's disgusting. I think Monster's disgusting. I especially think coffee's disgusting. But something about Celsius is just so sweet and just so addicting.
Yeah.
It's probably really bad for me. I'm probably going to die at like 50 instead of like 75 because I drink it so much. But how about you?
Yeah, so for me, usually I like coffee, but I wake up too late to actually make coffee, and I'm too cheap to buy coffee. So I think I usually have Red Bull because that's the only thing laying around at my apartment usually.
Fair enough.
So.
Anyways, we're going to have a great show for you today. We're going to kick it off with college basketball with Leo and Jason.
New year, new semester, new topic. We are back on Good Morning Sports Fans. I'm Leo Schaefer, along with Jason Glick, making his GMSF debut. Talking college basketball. Jason, any surprises right now in the AP Top 25?
So a lot of surprises, and I'm looking at it, and there's actually 8 teams right now in the SEC. That is just mind-boggling that the entire conference is taking up nearly a third of the entire space, and rightfully so. They had I believe 10 last week, and you look at the top. You have Auburn, Bama, Florida, Tennessee, just so many powerhouses that have been so good both in conference and out of conference, and really owning it at home, especially Auburn.
A lot of SEC teams in that top 25. Do you think the SEC is the new conference for college basketball, replacing the ACC? There's only 2 ACC teams right now in the top 25. Duke's at 2, and then Louisville's just sneaking in at 25. What are your opinions? Is this a power shift right now in CBB?
I think we are seeing a big power shift in CBB. There's a lot of ACC teams that had a lot of expectations that have just completely gone down. UNC's not even ranked right now, which is insane. They're 5-2 in conference play, 12-7 overall. It's been a very disappointing season for them. And Wake Forest also had all this hype. They're currently 6-1 in conference play and 14-4 overall, and that's not going to be enough to get them in. And now in the SEC, like I said, all these teams can own their own floor at home and really dominate in conference. Auburn's undefeated in conference. We just saw some crazy clashes. We can get into more of these, but Alabama beating Kentucky 102-97 this weekend was huge. Those are the 2 best offenses in the nation when it comes to points per game. I think this is a big shift in college basketball. That
kind of brings me into my next topic. I'm very surprised with how Auburn's playing right now. They obviously had this issue in the beginning of the season in regards to team chemistry. But Tahad Pettiford, shout out to Tahad Pettiford, Jersey, but they've been great. 17-1. They're the favorites right now to win the championship, and I could not be more happier with this team, especially with all the drama that they've received on social media for team chemistry issues.
Oh, absolutely. I think this team is really the team to beat. Like you said, Broom's averaging 18 points and nearly 11 rebounds. I think this team is very legit. Amazing offense and amazing defense, and we just got to see them against more SEC powerhouses because that's really that's what's gonna test them and see if they can really make a run.
In regards to the SEC, there are some pretty big games last weekend. I think the most notable one, Vanderbilt upsetting, Tennessee. Second upset for Vanderbilt this year as a school. They beat Alabama in football, which, you can't really complain about that. And now beating one of the top teams in college basketball, it's just great to be a Vanderbilt student right now.
It really is. No one could have expected this, beating all these top rivals in such high stakes. And Vanderbilt really had no business in doing so well this year in both sports, like you said. And in basketball, they're obviously not even ranked, and just coming in, playing against Tennessee and taking them down. Tennessee's currently at 6. If something like that happens again, they could be dipping way below they'll be in the double-digit mark, like below 15, I'm talking.
As we're filming, Vanderbilt is currently playing Alabama at the Coliseum, and honestly, my pick's at Vanderbilt. What do you have for that game?
Yeah, Vanderbilt looks really hot right now. I think they could maybe get themselves a few votes in the upcoming AP polls if this is the way they're playing, and I really do think that Vanderbilt is a team on a mission, and they're ready to take the SEC by storm.
Another team that I have on my kind of bucket list for the March Madness tournament is Georgia, another SEC team. They barely lost to Auburn, I think by 1 point at the Siege, and this might be biased because I know somebody on the team from my high school, but I'm really rooting for them. this March Madness.
Oh, how can you not? I mean, Georgia, I believe they've been getting votes this past AP poll, and I could totally see them squeezing in, competing with Auburn so closely, and I think they have a shot at making the top 25, and they'll definitely get a bit to March Madness.
All we can do is watch and wait. We're swinging it now to Jake, Joel, and Ryan for the CFB playoff review.
The Ohio State Buckeyes are national champions for the first time since 2014. What's up, everyone? Joe Plotchik, Ryan Croak, happy to have you with us on this College Football National Championship segment. Guys, Joel, I know you're kind of sad as a Penn State fan that the Buckeyes are champions, but they had a great run. They beat all their opponents. They had arguably the toughest schedule in the playoffs, beat all their opponents by double digits: Tennessee, Oregon, Texas, and then Notre Dame. What are your first reactions to this championship game?
First off, Jake, I'd like to congratulate the Buckeyes. They had a gauntlet of a run, and they came out on top. You got to hand it to them. My first reaction to the game, Ohio State was the more talented team. It's as simple as that. When you have guys playing at the level of receiver Jeremiah Smith and safety Caleb Downs, you're expected to win. And I will say I was extremely impressed with Riley Leonard's performance. Just gutsy. 3 touchdowns. Incredible stuff.
Yeah, he really gave it his all. Got to give him a lot of props. And my takeaway is pretty much the exact same as yours.
Yeah.
Ohio State was just simply better at every position, and it really showed in the game.
We'll stick with you, Ryan. A lot of X factors, a lot of key plays, key players. What are you going with?
I'm going with Chip Kelly's play calling, and I'm going with the defense in general. I mean, both of them. Chip Kelly was a masterclass that he put on last night. No punts until 6.5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter in the national championship game.
Crazy.
That's pretty impressive. And then the Ohio State defense. After that first Notre Dame drive, you were watching the game together, Joel. We were both like, okay, they have a chance here. That was a really good first drive they put together. 18 plays, 75 yards, 10 minutes taken off the clock. They were running the ball pretty much the whole time, and they had a lot of success. After that drive, their next 3 drives total, 11 plays, 11 total yards, and lasted a combined 5 minutes. Their run game got completely eliminated by Ohio State, and that was the determining factor. In that span between that first scoring drive and then the next one they had, which was all the way in the third quarter, Ohio State put up 31, and that was it.
It's crazy. It's hard for me to pick one piece from that all-around performance like Ryan's talking about, but I think Will Howard was the X factor. I really do. You look at Howard, he had a national championship record 81 completion percentage, and he did a great job extending drives with his legs especially. And I think his consistently really reflected in the stat sheet. Ohio State 9 for 12 on third down. That's just huge when you play against a great defense like that.
Well, I'm sure Will Howard's stock is definitely going up. Another guy whose stock's going up, it's Marcus Freeman, taking Notre Dame back to the championship game for the first time for Notre Dame since 2012. Joel, we'll look at you now. A historic season for this program for Marcus Freeman, for the Fighting Irish, but some miscues. What could have the Fighting Irish done better to come out with the win?
Yeah, Jake, they had a spectacular year, and in terms of what they could have done better, you just can't play behind against Ohio State. We've seen it throughout the entire playoffs. That's where the Buckeyes thrive. And I think it comes to the Notre Dame defense not playing well enough on third down. Again, I think that's what it is. And then, what do you think, Ryan?
I think the one moment that stuck out to me, obviously the offense struggled, but that field goal decision. 10 minutes left in the game. They spent 5 minutes on that drive. The one turnover they got, the Ibuka fumble, and they come away empty because Jeter misses the field goal. I personally would have gone for it there. I mean, you agree that we both would like to see better play calling in that goal-to-go situation. Some just questionable play calls, not trying to get closer to the goal line to set up a manageable fourth.
For that decision, I mean, I don't think it was a terrible call from Freeman. But the fade on 2nd and goal, you set up Leonard for an obvious 3rd and goal passing situation. Should have played the yards game. I completely agree with you, Ryan.
Well, they weren't able to come out on top, but they were down 31-3, came all the way back. Got to give them props for continuing to fight. But that'll be all. Congrats once again to Ohio State. Let's send it now to Sean and Andrew for the Premier League.
Hi, everybody. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Sean.
And we're back with a Premier League season update. Today, we're going to start off talking about the Champions League race in the Prem, and the title race is looking kind of over as Liverpool are 6 points ahead of everyone else, but there's some interesting teams in the mix: Forest, Bournemouth, etc. in the Champions League race for the top 5. What do you think, Sean?
I've been really impressed with all the teams you just mentioned, most specifically Forest, as they sit in 3rd right now with 44 points. And I've been really impressed with their front three of Alanga, Chris Wood, and Hudson-Odoi. super creative, and honestly going toe-to-toe with some of the best teams as we've seen over the past few weeks. What do you think about Bournemouth and some of those other teams that you just mentioned?
I mean, Forest is having an incredible season with their new coach, but I'd like to talk about Bournemouth and the fact that Kulevert, he just had an amazing game versus Spurs. He netted a hat trick in one half, and they really just dominated Newcastle. And they have some key wins or draws. They've only lost once at home this season, and hopefully they can keep that going. But there are some disappointing teams in the season as well. Let's talk about the Uniteds, the West Hams, and the Spurs, who are 13th through 15th round, fighting relegation. Not something you normally hear from those three teams.
Yeah, so it's definitely interesting. I know like a month or two ago we talked about Manchester United's sacking of Ten Hag and then the appointment of Amorim. And I know I thought things would be looking a bit better come this point in the season, and that they would just have like more production, more like cohesivity between the team, and they've just not come together at all under Amorim, and the back three looks super porous every game. What do you think about United and then also Tottenham and West Ham?
I just think United they don't have the talent. They're selling all their wingers right now, and they haven't really been able to bring everyone in. We talked about a couple months ago maybe bringing in Gyökeres, and I think they're going to have to put that on hold till the summer and just try to fight relegation. But on talking about Tottenham, this is just, I don't know if it's a bad season, but the last month they've been perished with injuries. They've lost two keepers, and Son's production this year has not been to the level of Son of past years. One of probably the best winger in Spurs history has been struggling this season, and Solanke's really been the only one who's been able to put the ball in the net for Spurs this year.
Yeah, Solanke, he's been good, and then Kulusevski I think also has moments of brilliance. But Son definitely is not the formidable force that I used to think about when I saw Spurs on the schedule. You know you need to lock up Son. Compared to now, I feel like Spurs just aren't much of a threat, and you're not really scared when you see them on the schedule at all.
No.
You never know what you're going to get. They're either really good, like we saw they beat City 4-0 a month ago, and then just nearly losing to really bad teams.
Complete destruction against Bournemouth last weekend. So I want to talk about the relegation battle. So Southampton, not arguably, they are having the worst season in the Premier League history. They've only been able to net one win and 3 draws in over half the season, which is very poor. But Leicester, Ipswich, Wolves, and Everton are all within 6 points of each other.
Yeah, I definitely like the way Ipswich plays. I feel like they have an identity and they're sticking it out with their manager. And then Wolves and Everton, I'll let you kind of take that over. What do you think about them?
New coaches, we'll see how they do under the new regime. Okay, now we're going to pass it to Elliot and Tommy with an NBA season update.
How's it going, everybody? We're here with NBA segment. I'm Tommy, this is Ellie, and we're going to start off with the MVP race. Who you got for MVP so far?
I know a lot of people are going to be looking at Shea for this pick, but I'm going at Nikola Jokic from the Denver Nuggets. I think that voter fatigue is his biggest competition this year. He's already won it twice, 2 years in a row, and I think the voters, the fans are kind of sick of it. But if you look at the numbers, he is the most valuable player. He is top 3 in points, assists, and rebounds, and no player has finished top 3 in those 3 categories since 1969. And if you want to do some more advanced stats, the Nuggets, have an offensive rating of 120 when Jokic is on the court. When he's off the court, they are bottom 5 in the NBA in offensive rating. I don't know what else. I don't know what other stats you need to prove to you that Jokic is the MVP.
That's hard to argue with, and obviously Jokic is the best center in the game. There's no debating that, even as a Joel Embiid guy myself. But Shea, like you mentioned, 31 points a game. His team is the #1 team in the West. They're 7 games above the second team, the second seed in the West, which is the Nuggets. And while Jokic doesn't have as much to work with, you could argue, I do think that Shea it's his time. Last year he was second, and I think that, like you said, voter fatigue. Jokic has 3 MVPs total now, back to back, like you mentioned. There's only a couple of guys, handful of guys ever in the history of basketball that have 4 MVPs, and I don't know if Jokic is at that level of like a Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Kareem. So I think it, like you said, is going to be kind of a narrative thing that since Shea has led the team to back-to-back #1 seeds, if it keeps going like this, that it'll be his award.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the next award here is the one that we actually agree on. Defensive Player of the Year, I have Victor Wembanyama winning that. I will say before that I want to highlight something that Jalen Williams, forward for the OKC Thunder, said, and he said that there should be 2 Defensive Players of the Years, one for a center, a big man, and one for a perimeter player. And I really agree with that because if you think about it, in the most valuable playoff games, what do you look for? You look for perimeter defense. You know, you can't be on the floor if you're a liability on defense. And perimeter defense and being a point of attack defender is one of the most difficult and most valued things in the NBA. And like Jalen Williams said, it seems like they just give it to the guy that has the most blocks and rebounds and all that. And while it's true that they do sometimes give it to the guy with just the most blocks, I think this is the case where Wembanyama does actually deserve it. He's averaging almost 4 blocks a game, and his opponents are shooting less than 47% at the rim when he is there. So it's basically impossible to score on him.
I don't disagree with you about the 2 Defensive Player of the Years. I also think that it makes a big difference in the playoffs. We saw it for 3-4 years in a row, Rudy Gobert winning Defensive Player of the Year, but then not being able to be on the floor in the playoffs because teams were exposing him. It's no longer Rudy Gobert's time. It is Wemby's time. He has an 8-foot wingspan. If you're trying to drive down the lane and get a lay over him, it's not going to be easy. And like you mentioned, 4 blocks a game is, I think, top 20 all time if he continues on this pace. So I think that also when you see the Spurs having the 24th ranked defense when he's not on the floor and the 6th when he is on the floor, that tells you all you need to know about his value on the defensive end. So I think it's got to be Wemby, and he's a huge favorite right now.
Yeah, for sure. Moving on, who do you have for Rookie of the Year?
I don't want to beat a dead horse about how bad this rookie class is because it is really bad. It should be Jerry McCain. Shout out Jerry McCain. Unfortunately got hurt. But right now I would go Alex Sarr for the Washington Wizards. He's only averaging 12 points a game, which kind of gets back to the point about how bad this rookie class is, that the Washington Wizards are the worst team in the league, don't have a lot of talent, and their best player is this rookie who's averaging 12 points a game other than Kyle Kuzma and Jordan Poole. But who do you have?
I'm going with the number 39th pick from this past year's draft. I'm going with forward from the Memphis Grizzlies, Jalen Wells. I like an underdog story, and he's a second-round pick. He's going to try to become the second-round pick in this lottery era to win Rookie of the Year. Malcolm Brogdon won in 2017. But he has the stats to back it up, almost 12 points per game, 43% from the field, 38% from 3. But I think what's more important is that with the injuries that the Grizzlies have had to Marcus Smart, he's had to really pick up the slack defensively. And I've watched a lot of Grizzlies game, and I see him guarding LeBron, Harden, Luka, Kyrie. He's my pick for Rookie of the Year. Last one right here. Who is your most improved player?
Most improved player is tough. There's a lot of ways to look at that. I got to go Cade Cunningham, Detroit Pistons. They had 14 wins all year last season. They already have 22 now in mid-January. He's averaging 25, 9, and 6. And he's the main reason why their team is doing so much better this season. He's really taken a step up, but who do you have?
I have Dyson Daniels. He past 2 years on the bench in New Orleans, gets traded in that DeJounte Murray trade, and he's really helped this Hawks defense. Last year they were 27th, now they're 20th. He's number 1 in the NBA in leagues by a long shot, and he's been a defensive monster this year, easily a first-team defensive player. So I have Dyson Daniels for my most improved player.
Well, thank you everyone for being here, and we're going to throw it to the AFC and NFC Championship games predictions.
What a weekend of football it was in the NFL. There were a lot of highlights, a lot of lowlights, but the NFC and AFC Championship is set. The Chiefs take on the Bills in Arrowhead, and the Eagles are at home in Philadelphia to take on the Washington Commanders. Spencer, what do you think of that AFC Championship game between the Bills and the Chiefs?
We have an incredible weekend of football on tap, and this AFC Championship is going to be a clash. We have the 2-seed Buffalo Bills traveling to Arrowhead to take on Patrick Mahomes and the 1-seed Chiefs. I think one of the keys for Buffalo and their defense to this game is can the defense force Mahomes into a few turnovers. We've seen Mahomes be a little bit more vulnerable this year than in prior years, but I still think Patrick Mahomes is going to have an absolutely huge game, MVP performance. One of the X factors for me with Buffalo's defense is linebacker Matt Milano. He's been great the past few years, but the last few weeks since ramping up from the injury, he's kind of been a shell of his former self. And I think in order for Buffalo to defend the run, and especially to contain Patrick Mahomes, they're going to need a lot out of linebacker Matt Milano. So my confidence level for Buffalo's defense, right now it's at like a 4 out of 10. What about you?
Well, I think this is Buffalo's best opportunity, I think, than any previous iteration of their team to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. Granted, though, the experience of the Chiefs matters. Kansas City knows how to win close games. Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, they are proven winners, 3 rings already, chasing number 4. The question is, can Buffalo beat this team in the playoffs 0-3 all time versus the Chiefs?
0-3 all time, and I think that's going to become...
Well, in the Allen era, at least.
Yeah. In this era, I think it's going to become 0-4 this weekend. Buffalo's offense should be stellar, but I think at the end of the day, the Chiefs, after their regular season loss, only their 2 losses was in Buffalo, and I think while this game's in Kansas City, it still has major revenge implications for Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, and I think with Kareem Hunt, the hot hand at running back, as long as DeAndre Hopkins involved in the offensive line can hold up against Buffalo's pass rush, I think Kansas City will win, and I am taking them to advance to their 3rd straight Super Bowl and 5th in the last 6 years, as a matter of fact. Give me KC in a thriller in overtime, 37-31. What do you got?
I've got KC in a close game as well, but there's a small part of me that is thinking, is this following the same trend of the Brady versus Manning rivalry about 2 decades ago? Remember that Brady and the Patriots came out with three rings before Manning and the Colts finally got a ring of their own. Is this Allen's turn to finally get a ring?
I want to say yes, but at the same time, my gut can't bet against the one and only Patrick Mahomes, and I also think Buffalo, KC definitely has a coaching advantage. I like Joe Brady, I like Sean McDermott, but at the end of the day, Spags and Andy Reid, I think are going to create a mismatch, and I think in an overtime thriller, KC's going to take it. So with that being said, let's move on to the NFC side of things. We have the Washington Commanders, the 6th seed, and the Philadelphia Eagles, the 2 seed. What do you have in this one?
Well, what a dream season this has been for Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders. Who would have thought a team that was projected to win 5 games coming into this season finds itself in the NFC Championship game off of beating the Super Bowl favorites in Detroit? Who had that on their bingo card, especially coming into this year? They split the season series with each other 1-on-1. Granted, in that second matchup, Jalen Hurts got hurt in the first quarter, and it was more of a Kenny Pickett-led Eagles team. The question is, can the Commanders stop Saquon Barkley? My bet is going to be no in Philadelphia. Give me Philadelphia to win by at least 2 scores.
Interesting. I think the Commanders are a team of destiny, and I know that's a cliche phrase, but I truly believe that Dan Quinn, Cliff Kingsbury, and Jaden Daniels will take this team to the big game. And a few reasons for that are, simply put, I've liked Jalen Hurts in the past, but he's been, he really hasn't been himself the past few games, especially coming back from that injury. And I think as long as Washington's defense can wreak havoc on Hurts and get at least a little pressure on that stout Philadelphia O-line, I think it'll be a long day for that Philly offense. And speaking from a Commander's point of view, as long as Jaden Daniels can push the ball downfield as he's done all season, I really don't think there's a way. Although the Philadelphia secondary has been excellent this year, I don't think it'll be enough to contain Daniels.
You know what? We'll have to see. I definitely agree with you. Jalen Hurts is going to have to get more out of A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert. They're going to have to get more out of the passing game. But you know what? I was in Philadelphia for that LA Rams game. Snowball in Philly. Weather played a factor. I know that Washington can play in cold weather, but you know what? Give me that Philly home field advantage to lead them to victory. We're going to toss it to Ronnie and Ethan up next with the NFL MVP race.
With the NFL Conference Championship round this week, MVP discussions have only heated up. I'm Ethan Koppelman alongside Ronnie Mandel. Ronnie, I'll toss it to you first. Do you have a pick for MVP this season?
Well, it's a very competitive race. There are multiple finalists as we've been going down the playoff race here. And, I think it starts off with the 2-time previous MVP, Lamar Jackson. He has had a phenomenal season again. He has running back stats in terms of a runner. He has over 1,200 rushing yards. He has 8 rushing TDs in the regular season. He's also 6th in the league in passing yards with almost 4,800. And he's led this Ravens team again to another division title. So I think he's got a big case to win it. But I also think the team that they just lost to, the Bills, and their quarterback, Josh Allen's also got another big argument to win MVP as well. Josh Allen has had a terrific season. His QBR is second in the league. He only has 6 interceptions, which is tied for third in the league. His rushing yards have increased throughout the seasons as well, too. He's got over 500 rushing yards, and he's led this Bills team with a not-so-star-studded receiving core to the AFC title game. So I think he's got a strong case, too. Obviously, with the voters, they got a tough decision because Lamar's went the past couple of years, and are they going to get some voter fatigue or not? But I think it's going to end up being down to those two. What do you think, Ethan?
So, yeah, if I were going to pick a quarterback, I would agree with you. I would go with Lamar, and the voter fatigue is obviously interesting, too. I'm not going to pick a quarterback. Say it's biased. I don't care. I'm going to pick the running back for my Philadelphia Eagles, Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
I get that people say that the offensive line is good. And it is, right? You have guys like Miles Sanders basically out of the league now. DeAndre Swift, well, you're a Bears fan. You know how DeAndre Swift was this season, I assume.
Oh, man, I know.
Not very great, not very good. But at the same time, if you're going to have a great offensive line, you need a great running back like Saquon Barkley to unlock them. And what we've seen out of Saquon Barkley this year has been nothing short of incredible. He's rushed for over 2,000 yards. He would have, in my opinion, very likely broken the record, the single-season record, if he had that other game in Week 18. Eagles said, no, Saquon, you're not going to play. And the biggest thing, in my opinion, Ronnie, that Saquon Barkley has brought to this Eagles offense is these bailout runs where he will just break and go 50-plus yards for a touchdown. The biggest problem with the Eagles last year is offensive stagnation.
Yeah, exactly.
That will happen.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No.
That will happen this season, too. It has happened. What happens occasionally is Saquon Barkley will get them out of this rut with this big run. And you look at the running backs of the past, right? Not very good. DeAndre Swift, Miles Sanders, they were pretty good at the Eagles. Not very good other places. Even when they were with the Eagles, they couldn't do that. My pick's Barkley.
I can't argue with that. Saquon Barkley's had a phenomenal year. It seems like every time I turn on the TV, he has a big run. I know this guy won't win MVP, but I feel like he deserves a shout-out because defensive players generally don't win it. But Myles Garrett had another just terrific season, and I feel like without shouting him out, that would not be right. I mean, he had almost 20 sacks. He had 23 tackles for loss, which is first in the league. He had 5 forced fumbles. Obviously, he wasn't on a good Browns team, so he won't be in the consideration, but I also feel like I should give a shout-out to the Texas A&M Aggie and Cleveland Brown now for almost the past decade, Myles Garrett.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird award. You really only see quarterbacks win it. Occasionally, you'll see a running back. Nobody ever talks about the defensive players. So in a way that's not with other sports, it's a very limiting award. Real quick, I think we got another minute. You got a coach of the year pick?
Well, man, there are so many options with this award, but I'm going to go with the guy who had a second chance and has made the most of it, and his name's Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn has done a tremendous job with the Commanders this year. Last year, they go 4-13. They have really no identity, no quarterback, nothing to really look forward to, and they picked Jaden Daniels. Obviously, he's a defensive coach, but he picked the red offensive coordinator in Cliff Kingsbury, and the Commanders have been terrific this season. They have vastly turned around the whole culture, and I think Dan Quinn has a big reason to do with that. He has lots of experience. He has a great relationship with the guys. He has in the NFC title game now, and I think Dan Quinn has definitely made the most impact when it comes from a new head coach and someone from an organization like the Commanders that hasn't had much success. What do you think?
Real quick, I got to go with the guy who got an extension today, Kevin O'Connell. Really tough division he's in, and the Vikings. My goodness, they just had a tremendous season. That's it for us today. Ethan Koppelman, Ronnie Mandel. We're going to send it to the outro.
Thank you for watching today. I hope you had a good time.
Yeah.
I'll see you next week when the Eagles are in the Super Bowl.
And when the Bills are in the Super Bowl.
See you next week.
See ya.